This is Robert Capuccio. Welcome to the Self-Help Antidote, a weekly dose of reason, perspective, and insight, where we challenge conventional thinking and explore authentic strategies and insights around personal transformation. Our commitment to you is to bring you some of the world's leading experts in the domains of fitness, wellness, coaching, and behavior change, separating fact from fallacy.
Top of the morning, Bobby Capuccio, or top of the afternoon. I always say good morning to you because I feel fresh, and then I realize that you are on the almost the other end of the day.
And then I'm exhausted. So I see you're miserable by comparison. I'm like, what is going on with Capuccio? She seems so fresh every day, and he just rocks up completely knackered and miserable.
Well, I was about to say it's great. And then I was like, that's not a great lead into, it's not great, but it's relevant and it makes for a great conversation. So, we jumped on, you told me what was going on this week, and I was like, this is a cool thing. I think we should talk about it because it's relevant for us drawing out some really good strategies and ideas and perspectives on how to get through acute phases of really stressful, or like how to be a high performer when everything we have to do is kind of in line with low performance, like lots of travel time, no downtime.
I could use this episode. What do you got for me, Tiff?
Well, you've got it backwards. I'm kind of hoping to draw all of your wisdom out. But it's interesting, right? Because it's one of those moments where you have to not be a product of all of the things that we know and talk about, because in this moment in time, you have to go against a lot of that. There's not always, and people get this, like people have families or emergencies, or work has moments where it gets like this. And the danger is that it doesn't become the normal operating system, I think, is the biggest thing, is knowing the difference between, okay, having a mindset of, I know this is not the best, and I know that a lot of these things are things that I'm not in line with doing because they're not good for high performance, but it's for now. So my mindset around those things for now needs to change. My relationship with how I view travel time and downtime and exhaustion and turning on and turning off, that has to shift momentarily, but I've got to make sure it doesn't shift and that I'm not doing this for a year straight and then down the track I'm burnt out.
Definitely. I know a lot of people don't have as much control over their schedule as other people do. So it's relative person to person. I mean, in the past, I had a lot more control over my day-to-day activities. I still have, a bit of autonomy there, but as things dictate, the more you say yes to sometimes, the less flexibility you have. I mean, you did at some point say yes to it, right? Whether you feel like you did or not. But that is a trade-off. And for me, ideally, when I used to travel by plane all the time, I knew the next day I got off a plane, I was going to be completely useless. So all I did was study on those days. And I'm not talking about hard research. I'm talking about light studying, and sometimes even things that were related to my industry that I enjoyed, but I would do nothing else that day, unless of course there's a meeting that you have to attend. There's a call you got to get on, but I would completely veg out. So I think what sustains you is the harder you go, understanding that you need more rest and recovery time. I think that's what is left out of our society. Not everywhere in our society. Some people get that intuitively, that creativity can't be forced. You have to allow it to flow. Like Mendeleev, when he was stuck on the periodic table, it was only after he completely quit and said, that's it, I'm letting go of this. And then later on, the periodic table came to him in a dream. Because prior to that, he was exhausted and he was trying to force it and force it and force it. And there's a thing, power versus force. Where I think power is when you allow things to happen. Force is when you're animate and you're on an empty tank, but you're still driving as hard and fast as you can, thinking, okay, if I keep driving, my gas tank will somehow refill. It won't. You're going to have to stop. You're going to have to shut the ignition off for a little while. You're going to have to take time to refill, and then you can keep going. I think there's a lot of factors. how you frame what you're doing. And then there's prioritizing. I used to work with a guy, and his thing was getting as many things done in a day as possible. And I think to a lot of people listening to this, they're like, yeah, that's called work. That's called performance. I've always looked at it differently. I've always looked at my to-do list, and my big question is, what are the two most critical things on this list that are more than likely to matter exactly 1 year from today? Mm-hmm. So if I complete them today, what are the positive consequences that I'm getting 6 months, a year from now? If I fail to do these things well, what are the negative consequences? So for me, like this week, what I'm doing are presentations. If I don't do those presentations, we don't fulfill our promise to our clients. That's really bad. What else can happen is, our clients don't get the resources that they need. We could have a service failure. That's another thing that goes on. So I am ruthless about, I don't care if I get more done today. What are my critical priorities? So I don't mind. Like I'm traveling 6 hours a day by car, which is brutal for me because one, I'm not a very good driver. It's a lot of focus. If I was traveling 6 hours by train, I really wouldn't care. But my question is, how can I use this downtime most productively? And I know you'll relate to this. It's like, okay, I'm not driving. What I'm doing is I'm learning. So I'll put on an audiobook that pertains to some direct aspect of what I do for work. Maybe not what I'm delivering that day, because I already have that prepared and I like to leave myself flexibility. So I don't need to listen to something that'll get me primed for that. If I'm going to do something like that, it's something that will put me in the state I want to be in. So it would be a soundtrack, or it would be a poem, or it would be comedy. So I walk in lighthearted. But what I choose to do is listen to books that are relevant to my work. So if you're in the car 6 hours a day, I'm learning 6 hours a day. That's productive. Because that's something we don't do enough. We're going, producing, but there's not enough time spent deep in mastery in order to increase the value of what it is that we're offering. And that's something I don't want to get stuck in. So I might complain, I've got 6 hours in the car. But the flip side of that is, well, how can I use that to turn my car into a university on wheels?
I love that. Once a week I drive down to, this is nothing like you're driving, but once a week I drive almost an hour down to do a training session with my boxing coach. And there's three things I toss up between on that drive. And so I choose, am I going to focus on connection? Quite often I ring my mum or dad because I always just ring people when I'm driving because I like to fill the rest of my time with bloody editing and things that fill my ears so I can't have conversations at the same time. So do I want to connect with someone? Who can I ring? That's always my first thought. Or is there a podcast or something that I wanted to listen to that I haven't had a chance to? Or is that all too much? Do I just want to put some music on that gives me a state change and I just want to have downtime? And so I kind of do this little check as I get in the car and go, what's today's drive going to be? What's it going to give me? And it's such a different way for you to frame it as like, is 6 hours a day driving at the moment, is that a task or an opportunity? And how you view that from the very get-go is going to put you in almost an emotional state about whether or not it stresses you out.
Definitely. I can't say that I'm excited, especially on the way home. After delivering a seminar, I can't say like, oh, I can't wait to get there, but at least I'm not going to be stressed out. If there's traffic and I'm there longer than I anticipated, I could probably pay attention to what I'm doing in terms of listening to an audiobook in traffic a little bit better than I can on the open road, especially people in Southern California. They drive like they are absolutely insane. So it's like all the lanes can be open. They'll be right on your bumper. Like you literally, if they smile at you in the rearview mirror, you can see cavities. That's how close they are to you. But it does make it a lot more tolerable. For me, being on the phone, I hate being on the phone when I'm driving because I feel like I can't give the phone conversation my full attention. So if I'm on a work call, I feel fragmented a little bit. Not like I would to stop and sit. Like whenever I have a work conversation and I'm on the road, I always give myself plenty of time to pull off at a junction and literally turn the car off and pay full attention. And phone sex, forget about it. Wouldn't even attempt that on the road. So distracting.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Often when I'm driving somewhere familiar, so there's I don't have to concentrate. I don't have to figure things out. I know where I'm going. It's usually a longer drive if I am making a call, so I can settle in and pay attention to a conversation.
Yeah, I wish I had that ability. I mean, I have to do it sometimes, but especially connecting with friends, like they're talking about things that are pretty important and serious. I'm like, I am not 100% present right now.
And you're like road raging. You're road raging at someone.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, so, I'm having this problem with my boyfriend. Oh, sorry. No, I'm sure your boyfriend's very lovely. Go on. Person in front of me, however. Now, I don't really road rage. Well, sometimes things are just absurd. As much as I'm bewildered. I think I get fascinated now more than I get angry. It's like, wow, how irrational people are, especially when you're driving. And for the most part, you go in a straight line. It's not like street traffic where there's all these variables, but it's people cutting in and out and driving right up on someone's bumper. They decelerate. So days where I'm driving a far distance, I pass by multiple accidents. I'm like, I bet you out of 3 accidents, 2 of them were completely avoidable. So irrational behind the wheel. Like, those people said this morning, oh God, this had to be not even 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving and somebody cuts around me to get in front of me to speed to, we're both heading towards a red light, which is why I wasn't speeding. I'm just coasting along because that light's going to be red by the time I get there, whether I accelerate and, I get there 30 kilometers an hour faster or whether I slow down. To me, it makes a lot more sense to just go slow. I'm not holding anyone up. This person was behind me. They got so angry. There's definitely not a lot of people on the road. And they drove right around me, sped up as fast as they could just to hit their brakes. I'm like, what is the point of that? Like, are you thinking or are you just in such a heightened state of alertness that you're just reacting?
What do you do? Tell me what you like, especially at the moment, because what is required of you when you get to where you have to go is like you got to be switched on. You got to be on. You got to deliver really well. What are the little things that help make a difference for you to get, look after yourself in the middle? Do you make any changes? Where do you squeeze in rest? How do you switch off? Like what changes for you to maintain this?
This is exactly what I meant by I will be ruthless on these days. So let's say I have to start a presentation at 9 in the morning. I will make sure that I arrive by 8, and sometimes I'll arrive by 7. So I'll leave my house before the birds are awake, and I will get to a coffee shop, and I will sit down and I will go through my stuff. I will listen to something that allows me to decompress and switch completely off. Then I'll go back to my stuff. Then I'll probably take a walk around the car park 2 or 3 times, just to get myself into state. And then I will arrive early and present. So I do not rock up 20 minutes before, because when you rock up, they show you around, they set you up, there's some housekeeping things to go over. Never, unless something. So a few weeks ago, I got something wrong. I was actually I drove all the way into the city because I thought that's where the presentation was, because it was one of these weeks where I had a few of them. And it was like, oh no, I'm in the complete wrong city. So I had just enough time to get there with no traffic. And this very rarely happens to me. So I got there actually early. I think I observed local laws and speed limits. I'm pretty sure. And I got there 15 minutes early, but if there would have been any traffic whatsoever, I would have been late. So that really scared me. So that's one instance where just got right out of the car and rocked up, got set up, and then delivered. And I hated it because I feel like, it's kind of like being in the gym business. There was a very big difference when the Group X instructor's in front of the room. She got there early, they're ready, they're primed. That's going to be a very different class than the class starts at 7. They rock up at 6:59. They're like fumbling with their microphone, their music. And like the first few minutes of the class, they're frazzled. And that carries on through the rest of the session. It's the same thing. You got a room of people waiting for you. They better be the most important thing you're going to do that day. I mean, I'll do other things that day, but never at the expense of my highest priority task. What did Goethe say? Things that matter most should never be at the mercy of things that matter the least. That definitely applies to public speaking, my to-do list, and work in general.
Do you know what else? And we've talked about this before when we talked about preparing for presentations and things. And I'm giving one tomorrow, and I've been I'm not driving 6 hours a day, but as I'm going on holiday shortly, because we've done a few double episodes, I'm trying to get ahead in the podcasting so that I can leave and be right ahead and come back and not have to rush, and everything's preloaded and done. So I've been really busy, and my schedule's been aptly jammed because of that. And what has been one of the most impactful realizations for me over the last 2 years when it comes to presenting, because I love doing it, but it causes me a lot of in the lead up, stress, is that idea that, the people who I'm presenting to, they need to have slides of what I'm going to present. Slides for me is just a couple of slides with my cat and dog on it anyway, but that's important.
The essentials.
I've got to put the right photos of the cat and dog on the slides so that I feel, and they just trigger me to know what I'm going to talk about. But
that's the only time I would ever use slides.
But when I used to have presentations coming up, I would literally have there'd be this overarching feeling of stress and anxiety because it would shadow over me for a good 2 weeks. And I'd look at my slots in my calendar and go, these are the times I have to do this. And I've done it this week even. I go, all right, you've got Monday at this time and you've got Tuesday, you've got a bit of time here and you're going to do that. And on those days, I'm doing other things and it's there. But I work best because if I do it early, I change it because it really comes like I'm just so fluid in exactly how I want to talk about the topic that I've said I'll talk about. And it always just seems to come together right before. So in order for me to be a high performer in a time where it's really, I'm already kind of at capacity and maxed out and, in theory, to get it done Monday and have all the rest of the week not worrying about it would work. That doesn't work for me. So I have to change my relationship with that idea so that I go, it's okay. I understand that the best of me comes the couple of days before and it always works out so that at least Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I can just relax and not have the added stress. Because if I don't have that understanding of me, then I carry the stress Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on an already stressful schedule around an already stressful thing.
So you become more switched on as the date approaches.
Yeah.
It's that stress of the presentation that increases your level of creativity. Yeah. I'm exactly the same way.
Yeah. And in the lead up to that, what happens naturally, which is preparation in itself, which just a TIFF style of preparation is my mind is just, I'm having the conversations in my head. I'm thinking about it. I'm analyzing the conversations I'm having with people and I'm drawing out things like this morning. I had an amazing conversation with a person at the gym I started chatting to, and she's coming tomorrow now because we got chatting and I said, you should come along to this. But that conversation reflected what I already wanted to talk about and was an amazing example and really filled me up. So because my mind's already on it but not stressing about it, that's becoming my content. That's going to be a big part of my content is talking about that interaction because it's an example of exactly what I wanted to talk about. So the preparation's happening. It just doesn't look and feel like maybe I think most people think it should.
That's the thing around prioritization, where you look at your to-do list and say, okay, I've got 10 things on this to-do list. Which 7 to 9 things can I not do? Because I think what you choose not to do is just as important as what you choose to do in a day. And when you have events like that, and it doesn't have to be public speaking. Not everyone's a public speaker, but it can be you're meeting with a client. You have a presentation for the board. You have a account management meeting with a major client of your organizations. Whatever you do, you have these it's kind of like that story about the teacher when she stood in front of the class and she put this giant jar on the table and said, is this jar empty or full? And students looked at her like, wait, what do you mean? It's empty. And she put this would be a kind of cool but very weird lesson. And she started putting all these big rocks into the jar. She filled it up to the top. We've all heard this story. And she said, well, tell me now, is the jar full or is it empty? And they're like, oh, the jar's completely full. And then she took out all these pieces of gravel and she poured the gravel in between the big rocks and said, well, now is it empty or full? And the students were like, well, yeah, it's really full. So she's like, are you sure? And she took out all that sand and she poured all the sand in and went in between the pebbles. And she's like, okay, now empty or full? And the students are staring at her. They don't know what to say now. I don't know if it's empty, full. I don't know what she's going to pull. Why she got all that weird shit under her desk? And good point. And then she pulled out a giant jug of water and she poured it all the way and said, okay, now it's full. And then when you ask people, what's the point of that story? Sometimes the interpretation, and I've heard, and they're not taking the piss, they're serious, is no matter how much stuff you have on, if you're committed, there's always room to fit more stuff. No, that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is you gotta deal with your big rocks first.
Yeah.
If you want to get more stuff done, deal with your big rocks first. If she filled that whole thing up with sand, she wouldn't have gotten the rocks in. She might have gotten the water, wouldn't have gotten the gravel. And that's the point. So when you have daily events, what's the most important thing I have 5, 6 days a week, however many days of the week you work, that creates a framework. Those are your big rocks that everything else gets poured around. And it allows you to kind of create some psychological distancing so your entire week doesn't contribute to anxiety and duress. Like I've got a presentation tomorrow. And then I've got one Friday. I delivered 2 today. I got another one on Sunday. I don't give a toss what I'm talking about on Friday. Couldn't care less. The only thing that exists in my world is tomorrow. And after I deliver that presentation, I couldn't care less about what I got going on Sunday. I'll deal with Sunday on Saturday, right? I'm going to deal with Friday tomorrow. And it really helps you free up some of that anxiety and mental bandwidth. And because you are more creative and you can use the tension positively like you do to increase creativity.
Do you know what else I've found really beneficial for me? I feel like sometimes I don't have we always have that background, even unconsciously, that background worry of what people think or what people see or how they interpret things. And I know that earlier this year when I was training for an event that took all of my capacity, so I had to train for an event and get extra work done to have time off for this event. It didn't end up happening, but at the time that was priority. So what it meant was I didn't have the bandwidth, either the bandwidth or the time to actually respond to everybody, whether it be social or even business at times. So I would, if I don't have time to respond to a message, I don't read it, because if I open it at a time where I can't read and respond and the notification disappears, I will forget about it. And I don't want to forget about it, but I just will. And
the other person knows that you read that message.
Yeah. So I know that people can see that, oh, she's online and I've sent her a message, but she hasn't read it. It's because I don't have time yet. So I've got to come back to it when I've got time to read it and respond to it. However, at this time I went, okay, I don't have the bandwidth and I need to make amends with the fact that that people might make decisions on why I'm doing that, I don't have to run around explaining or feeling, because I have this feeling bad of like, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. Sorry I didn't get back to you. It's like, you know what? I'm going to be flimsy. I know why I'm flimsy. It's got nothing to do with the other person. And we'll have a conversation about it sometimes. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like,
makes sense. I feel horrible. So, Tiff, I have to apologize about all the horrible things I've said about you in the past when my feelings were hurt, because I thought, I clearly see she's read the message. She hasn't responded. So, and not that I was like, I guess not that I was probably getting any flack, but in my mind, if I have not read somebody's message yet, I could almost feel the anxiety rise. I'm like, they're waiting on me. It's like, it's okay. I don't have capacity right now, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, Tiff. That's what you just don't have capacity. And when you do reach out in a week, you'll just be able to go, hey, sorry, got this going on, blah, blah, blah. Just made a huge impact on my stress levels, those underlying baseline stress levels that you just move through the day with. Well, I mean, the takeaway there is, don't open something unless you're ready to take action on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a small action, like a thoughtful response to what someone's actually saying.
Yeah.
Or that could be something that you need to do.
Yeah.
But if you open all that stuff and you're not prepared to take action on it, things are going to slip through the cracks. Yeah. So I used to work in an organization. And one of the big bosses would never read their email. And somebody would send like a 2-page email, which is a little bit of, if you get to send a 2-page email and it's not something you're sending out to multiple people, pick up the phone. That's the way I look at it. Or get on Zoom.
Yeah.
But they would send back responses like, agreed. And it would drive people absolutely mental. Or they would answer something in one short, pithy sentence that in no way, shape, or form addresses any of the concerns that were brought up on the email. Yeah. And it's just, you're just opening stuff and then you're getting behind and you're just sending quick responses, which is really frustrating because a lot of times, nobody sits down and crafts an email that long just because it's like, oh my God, I love email. I'm just going to, there's a serious issue that needs attention.
Yeah, my eyes glaze over when I'm not a reader either. I'm like, I went to an event this week, a little kind of private networking event that a friend was holding, and the day of it, I was like, is there anything I need to take or do? Or I better go look at the details. And I opened the email and had a quick scan down because my brain was going, look for address and anything you might need to do or take. And then as I scrolled through, I noticed that she'd put the names and this little synopsis of everyone that was going. I go, God, that's so great. I don't even have time to read that right now, but that's so organized. And then when I arrive, we do this little kind of icebreaker as we get in, and one of the first things she mentioned was being pregnant again. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know she was pregnant. When we got talking later, she goes, that was the first thing on the email. I go, I didn't read the email. I'm not very good. And even when I read the email, sometimes I'm scanning it so quick because I'm looking for a specific thing. So note to everyone, don't email me details.
I got in so much trouble one year. I actually got sacked. So I was presenting for this organization, and the person who took over the coordination, she would send out emails to all the presenters. And the first page of it would be like things that are happening in the organization, upcoming events. And then it would be like, it's so-and-so's birthday. We had cupcakes. There's all the, and I was in the middle of opening a location with a friend of mine in Chicago. I was so busy. We were hiring an entire team of salespeople, an entire team of trainers. We had to get them up to speed. And then somewhere on the second or third page of that email, she would say, okay, here's the presenters for this upcoming event. I didn't read that far. I think I stabbed myself with a fork halfway through the email and said, okay, I give up on this because none of this is pertaining to me. And it was like, the day before, the night before, she's like, okay, so did you arrive yet? I was like, what do you mean arrive? She's like, you're supposed to be at this event. I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm in the middle of a grand opening. And she just went crazy. She's like, did you not read the emails? I'm going, okay, maybe that's my responsibility. I should read the emails, but it was such a long email. And the first 80% of it was about nothing. So I just went on to the next thing. And it's like, if I don't know, I'm not telling anybody how to do their job, but when I had people going out to do events, I would make sure I get a verbal confirmation. I would not do that in an email. I say, okay, hey, you're speaking on this day and you're doing exactly this. I would just go, well, I sent an email. My job is done.
Oh,
it's just, God, I got in so much. I don't think I ever, I did speak for that organization, but not one of their big schools ever again.
Oh, that's bad on their part.
It's just like, these epic emails. I mean, I need to take some responsibility for that as well, which I did. I was also pretty upset with myself for not reading through the email. But I spoke for a lot of different companies, and they would reach out to you and go, hey, we need you on this day. Are you available? There's no misunderstanding that. There's no like, oh, we added all this stuff. And by the way, you and 5 other people were mentioned at some point on page 3. It's like, oh, okay, thanks. Thanks for that. Yeah, wow. We are really running a tight ship with these presentations, aren't we? Plus, I was just like buried in work. Going back to the buried in work, I was listening to one of your episodes on the way back today. And I was listening to Hops the other day with the bookkeeper.
Oh, how great was he?
Yeah, that was a really poignant episode. Wow. And I wasn't expecting that. I did not, for people who didn't listen to that episode, I did not expect it to take the turn it took. Like I thought, oh, all right, okay, this is about one thing. And then it became about something totally different.
Yeah. It was, for everyone listening, that it was called Surviving a Lot. And it was Rob Marshall was the guest. It's amazing.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
So Hops, when I was listening to one of his episodes, he had said something to the effect of with that guy who was balancing like work-life equations. And like, this is the ratio of work-life balance. You need to be happy, which is ludicrous. We could do 6 podcast episodes on why that is absolutely ridiculous. But Hobbs had an amazing question where he was like, okay, if I'm doing 60 hours a week of work that I absolutely love, you're telling me based on your equation, that's somehow worse than doing 30 hours a week of work that I cannot stand? No way. I would even say that 60-hour work week probably makes somebody who's aligned between what they love and what they're doing. It invigorates them. Not saying they don't come home exhausted at the end of the day, but they don't wake up that way. So again, all these things about the travels, that if the essence of what you're doing is something that it's not only that you love in terms of enjoyment, but it is meaningful. Alan Watts talks about turn every facet of your work into a game. What if it was a game? How can I play at this? And he uses a really good example, bus driver. So in one of his seminars, he was talking about, could you imagine being a bus driver? Driving a really busy route in a busy city? It would be hell. It's torture, especially back then. He was talking about this in the 1960s. You have to swerve in and out of traffic. You have zero margin of error. If you get into an accident, you're in a lot of trouble. They're really strict with stuff like that. And as you're doing this, you have to know exactly where to stop, let people off, where to let people on. You have to exchange money. It's not like they just step on, tap something like in today's day and age, and they go find a seat. Then you have to deal with rowdy customers and all that. And it's like, what if you turn that into a game? And I don't know if he was talking about this because it was the 60s, but what if that was a video game where I have to get from one location safely and effectively within a certain amount of time, given all the obstacles, people are coming in, then, arguments and fights break out. It kind of does feel like a video game. And if you're like, I'm playing a video game, you're going to be a fun bus driver. Like my mom used to take the same route, the same time every day and had the same driver. And it made a difference in her life because this driver would joke around, make jokes with everybody. And it's like, oh, wow, well, that's a lot of effort for the driver. No, that driver probably goes home feeling a hell of a lot better than people who are miserable. You've seen those, and this isn't a judgment. I'm not saying you should be one way versus another way, but you've seen, like, you've gotten on the bus and the driver just looks like they have lost the will to live. Like, I hope you're not on a suicide mission because I'll wait for the next one. It's serious. It's like that person does not come home the same individual as the one who's like, if I'm going to drive, I'm going to have as much fun as possible. And it's very unlikely that she's driving and having so much fun, making so many jokes that she's passing people and stops. She forgets where she's going. She doesn't let people off. I bet you she's better at her job, does better time than people who are stressed out about it. So how can you have fun doing what you're doing?
Yeah. You just reminded me of last Sunday after I finished my boxing workshop. I went to buy Luna some chicken necks from the butcher, and they were closed.
Say that again. What'd you have to buy, Luna?
Some chicken necks. So the butcher was closed. I was like, oh, bugger. Anyway, I walked through this arcade and there was another butcher. So I went in and I said, can I have a kilo of chicken necks? Chicken necks. The Tassie coming out of me. And this butcher, he turned around, he's like, okay, cool. He grabs him, he goes, is this for soup or for a pet? And I said, a pet. And he asked about the pet and we had a chat and he goes, I make this pet food mince, and he told me about it and he goes, I'm going to give you a sample. It's really, and he was so proud of it and he said it's got this and this in it. This is all it's got in it. And he was so proud. And then he goes, I cut all of the meat here. I cut everything you see here. I cut and pack. And everything was vacuum sealed. It was so clean and vacuum sealed. And he was so proud. And he goes, if there's ever anything you want and it's not here, you just ask me because there's a 99% chance that I can get it. And then he was so proud of the meat that I just went, And I looked around and I said, you know what? Give me one of your eye fillets. Give me one of your steaks. So I bought the steak and then we got chatting more and he goes, my name's Tommy. And I'm like, well, my name's Tiff and I am definitely coming back here every week. And because I don't get most of my meat that I eat from a butcher. I normally just grab it at the supermarket because I'm just bloody lazy and I don't have but that made me want to have, how can a man be so passionate about meat? And I just looked across at his butcher shop and went, you're so great. That makes all the difference to me.
He's the chicken neck king of Melbourne.
The chicken neck king of Melbourne. And now Luna not only gets chicken necks, but now she gets this beautiful raw meat bloody thing, whatever the thing that he makes is. It's amazing. She loves it. She was like, oh, Mum, this is the best. That she actually said that. Oh, Mum, thanks so much.
See, now that's the most interesting thing we've ever said on the podcast. You should have the chicken neck king, I'm sorry, on your podcast.
I think I might. Maybe I will.
Like, if you're complaining about your job, here's a guy who is completely passionate about chicken necks.
Yes. So proud.
The chickens, they're probably a bit fucked off about it. But him, he's doing his best.
Bobby, let's not keep you any longer. You've had a big day and a big week and a big time at the moment. Thank you so much for finding the time to do this. I always feel a million times better after we've chatted. So thank you. And
I had so much fun. Thank you, Tiff. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Visit us at theselfhelpantidote.com to share your feedback, insights, and recommendations on what topics you'd like us to explore in the future.